Let's talk about Songs of Innocence, aka that shitty U2 record from 2014 that's more than likely been stuck on your iPhone for nearly a decade. At the time, U2 themselves reached out to Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, and they basically said, hey, we have this album, we're very proud of these songs, can you buy the record for us and distribute it to all 500 million iTunes users? And U2 has always had a good relationship with Apple. Back in 2004, they actually released the U2 edition iPod, and at the time, the artist tab for iTunes actually had Bono's face on it. And it seemed like a good idea on paper, right? Because at the end of the day, when does a major artist like U2 give out a brand new record for free? The main gripes that people seem to have with this rollout was the fact that it was automatically added to your iTunes purchases, so if you weren't a fan of U2, it made it look like you bought a U2 record when in reality you didn't.
I mean, there's a lot of people who were, uninterested in U2 who are now, mad at U2, which, as far as we're concerned, is an improvement from the record.
And for a good 90% of those 500 million iTunes users at the time, this record was automatically downloaded to your device and there was no way to really delete it. There were even some celebrities that were pissed off about this thing. Sharon Osbourne famously had a few choice words for U2 themselves, as well as Tyler, the Creator.
And Tyler, the Creator says, tweets, U2, I don't want you, Bono. I didn't ask for you, I'm mad. I did not know you were on my phone, he continues. It's legit like waking up with a pimple or like herpes.
And Apple Music wasn't a thing yet. It wouldn't come out until a year later in 2015, so even if you somehow managed to remove the downloads for this album, it would still stay in your iCloud, so you were still able to listen to the songs even if they weren't physically downloaded onto your device. And another thing that sucked was the fact that the iPhone 6 was coming out around the same time as this album, so every new iPhone 6 that showed up had this album automatically installed on it. And it sucked too because the entry-level models were either like 8 to 16 gigabytes, so 120 megs were automatically taken up by this U2 record that you theoretically could not delete. And sure, 120 megs doesn't sound like much, but you gotta remember Apple does not support external SD cards, so you can't add more storage onto your iPhone. Whatever storage you have is what you get. You can't add more unless you do iCloud or whatever, but even then, iCloud wasn't as robust as it is now. So trust me when I say that every gigabyte, every megabyte, every kilobyte counts in terms of Apple. And like you would expect, this rollout received a ton of backlash for both U2 and Apple. So much so to the point where iTunes literally had to whip out a link that allowed you to remove the album from your downloads and from your purchases. The only problem with that was the fact that it practically didn't work either. All it would do was ask you if you wanted to remove the record, you would say yes, and then you would put in your iTunes information, your Apple ID, your password, whatever, and it was supposed to just automatically remove from your purchases as well as your downloads. That didn't happen for a lot of people. Because if you actually look at the reviews on iTunes right now for this album, you're going to notice that even as early as 2 or 3 years ago, people are still complaining that they can't delete this record. And I actually found a forum from 2022 of somebody literally still asking if there's a way to remove the album. But looking back at the situation now, almost 10 years later, it made me wonder, was it so negatively received because it was U2 specifically? What if it was another artist like Metallica, or Rihanna, or Lil Wayne, or even Lady Gaga? Would it still get the same backlash? And also, how many of those 500 million users honestly gave the album a fair shot? Like, who really listened to this thing from beginning to end? Because I truly did listen to the record when it first dropped. You could actually see this Facebook status right here from 2014. I don't know why I said, oh dude, they gave away a free record for free. And I'm not a big U2 fan by any means, but when I heard that record back in the day, I honestly thought that it was kind of good. It wasn't the worst thing that I ever heard by any means. It wasn't the best either. It was okay. And since Songs of Innocence is actually turning 10 years old this year, I decided to listen to the album in its entirety for the first time in nearly a decade. And I could honestly say that, yeah, I still do feel the same about it. It's definitely an okay record. I actually really do love the first 4 tracks right here. These are all solid in my opinion. But the minute that we get to Iris, Volcano, like the rest of the stuff, that's when it kind of starts to fall off for me. But it's not bad by any means. It's just mid, I guess. If I could put a rating on it, I would probably give it maybe like a 5.5, maybe a 6 out of 10. So this is the legacy of Songs of Innocence, for better or for worse. Now, don't get me wrong, I definitely do applaud the band for trying to be innovative and trying something new, but this was ultimately just an experiment that unfortunately failed. Now, in my opinion, what I think they really should have done was still give out the record for free. That's definitely a good idea, but make it an option. Get a download link, have people log into their iTunes account and be like, hey, would you like to download this record? You click yes, and there you go. Now it's on you. Don't just automatically give it to majority of your users. And as much as I hate to admit it, Chad Kroeger of Nickelback said it best himself. You're not going to do yourselves any favors by putting yourself in front of people that are not going to be fans of the band.